Hello and welcome to another Miss Alley Cat DIY video. Today I'm super excited to show you how I made this mini DIY succulent shadow box using Dollar Tree items, of course. I had so much fun making this. I hope you enjoy, so without any further ado, let's get into this DIY. For this DIY, you're going to need one of these little banks from Dollar Tree. I got this design, but the design really doesn't matter. Today I'm also using these large jumbo craft sticks or large popsicle sticks, whatever you want to call them. I know Walmart carries these, but I got them from my local Kroger store. I'm also using these skinny, small craft sticks. I got these from my same store that I just mentioned, Kroger. I'm not sure if Walmart carries these, but you could always just use a larger craft stick and cut them to the appropriate size. And then of course, for a succulent DIY, you're going to need some succulents. Now I picked up these 3 succulents from the Dollar Tree. You can get whichever ones you like, and you could do, I would say, up to 4. I don't think too many will fit in the little bank, but 3 I thought was a good number. I like odd numbers. So the very first thing that I did was remove the backing of the frame. As you can see, it's sitting to my left. I didn't film that. I'm not sure why, but yeah, just remove the backing first. So we want to take the glass out of our frame, and to do this, I'm just using this heat tool to melt the glue. Please ignore the fact that my glass is broken in one spot. When I brought it home, it did crack, and that was totally my fault. To remove the glass, though, I just used a heat tool. You can also use a blow dryer, and all I'm doing by doing this is melting the glue, and then it just comes right out. So now, taking the back of the inside of the shadow box, I'm just hot gluing moss all over this backing, and you will be able to see this inside of our shadow box. And I'm just doing this in sections, and you do want to go all the way to the edge of the little square so that everything is nice and covered. Once I had the whole thing covered, I did go back in and just make sure that all of the little holes were completely covered, just so that there was moss over the whole entire thing. Now inside of our shadow box frame, I'm taking some more moss, and I glued moss to half of the frame. In the inside, just taking it in sections, and I did this because on the other half we're going to be putting some wood. So as you can see, I did put moss on half of our frame. It's kind of in an L shape. And on the other side, the other L shape, we want to use our large craft sticks. Now I did end up using 4 large craft sticks for this part, and all I'm doing is I'm snipping off the very end of the craft stick. Just the very, very end. And you want to do this to all 4 of your larger craft sticks. Now taking some moss, I'm only putting it on the skinny part of the inside of our frame, just simply because the wood is not going to cover this part, and I'm not putting the moss on the thick part like we did on the other side, because we're going to put wood there. And I do continue this all the way around the rest of that half of the frame. I hope that makes sense, but you can see in the video where I'm gluing the moss, not on the thicker part, just on the skinny part. As you can see, here's an example of them all cut. If they're not perfect, don't worry about it, because you can always add some moss to fill it in. So now I'm going to use this furniture scratch marker in maple. You get this at Dollar Tree in a pack of 3. You can also use another kind of wood stain, or you don't have to use wood stain at all. And now I'm just hot gluing the outer portion of this inside of our frame, and I'm hot gluing down one of our wood pieces as close to the edge as possible. I do it here first so that it does touch the end the edge rather of the frame, and then I'm going to go ahead and glue the other one to the inside of that part of the frame. And if there's any gaps or anything, I can always add some moss to fill it in. So as you can see in the video, that's what I'm doing. So I just flipped my frame around, and now we're just going to go ahead and do the exact same thing on this other side, putting some hot glue down and then pressing one of our wood pieces down on top of that, and of course the same thing with the other piece. Now, like I mentioned before, I'm going to go ahead and add some moss in the corners just to give it some more character, and my wood pieces didn't necessarily reach from end to end, so this way you can't even tell, and like I said before, it gives it some character. So I did this on all of the corners or anywhere that I thought that it needed a little moss. The next step is to glue our moss backing that we put moss all over to our frame. Now you could try and snap it back together, but because of the wood pieces that made it a little bit difficult, so I decided to just hot glue it. It really makes no difference and nobody can tell that you've just hot glued it, so I thought, what the heck, I'm just gonna hot glue it. And just a tip, when you're hot gluing your back piece back onto the frame, I would suggest putting it back on in the correct direction. In other words, putting the top where it would clip in, at the top where you can see the slit where you would put coins into what was a bank. I just think that it makes it a lot more even and glues a little bit better when you do that, even though it is a square. But yeah. So this is what you should be left with so far. I think this is really cute on its own, but I wanted to make it a little bit more rustic. I don't know, a little cuter. So now I'm just going to be using those skinny craft sticks that I mentioned earlier. I took 4 of them and kept them the longer length, and then I did cut 4 more pieces so that they would fit in the outer edges of the outside of our frame. So at this point you can decide whatever you want the top and the bottom of your shadow box to be. And now I'm just taking those 4 shorter little sticks that we cut, and I'm just putting them on the sides, and I'm putting the long ones on the top and the bottom of my shadow box with some hot glue, of course. Now I'm taking that maple furniture stain marker, and I'm just going to go ahead and color all of those wood pieces that we just glued down. In retrospect, I should have done all of the wood staining before I glued down my wood pieces, just because it makes it a little bit more difficult to get in like the creases, and it did work out just fine. But I would suggest doing all the wood staining before you glue it down, just because it makes it a little bit easier. But I digress. You live and you learn. It worked out in the end. So then I took 3 more large jumbo popsicle sticks. I cut off each end on all 3 of my popsicle sticks. And now, to save time and to do it a little bit smarter than I did before, I am using my marker, my furniture stain marker, staining all of the edges and then hot gluing each piece down. That way there's no piece that my pen cannot reach and can't stain. And then once I made sure that all the edges were all stained, I am now staining 2 small pieces. These are pieces of the skinny craft sticks that I cut. I just cut them so that they are long enough to fit the exact size of the width of my the outside of my frame, and then I went ahead and glued them down. And now, as you might expect, I'm just going in with that furniture stain marker and I'm staining all of the visible parts of the wood. And this process is the same for all 4 sides, so I just went and started on the next side. So here are all 4 sides all done, and as you can see, once I had all 4 sides done, I did go back in with my furniture stain marker and just made sure that all the visible parts of wood were stained. And I didn't show how I did every single side because it is the same as the side that I did show. So now the really fun part begins. Now we need to depot our succulents, and to do that it's super easy. They just pull right out of their foam, and now I'm just taking some wire cutters and trimming the stem all the way up to the bud. That was also simple because it's plastic. I thought it was wire, but it was plastic, so it cut really quite easily. And now I'm just messing around with how I want them in my little shadow box. Totally up to you, but that's what I'm doing here. And then once I figured out exactly where I wanted them, I just took my hot glue gun and I simply glued them down with some hot glue right into the moss. And this next little part is optional, but I noticed a couple parts on the top of my box that I didn't like, so I just took a very small piece of wood, cut it to basically go on top of that part of the box that I didn't like, glued it down, and just stained it with my wood stain, my marker. And yeah, totally optional. I just thought for aesthetics it made my box look a little bit nicer. Speaking of aesthetics, of course I had to add some more moss. All I'm doing here is I'm adding some moss in the creases, anywhere that I see like the black plastic coming through. And also I wanted the moss to kind of be climbing and going to the top outside of our shadow box, just because I thought that made it look a little bit more nice. It gave it some more character, and I did put it in the cracks on top of the box and just anywhere that I felt that it needed a little bit more moss. So the last thing that I did is I'm just taking these fairy lights. These are from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just using a very teeny tiny amount of hot glue to secure these to my shadow box. I just didn't want them going all over the place, and I wanted the lights in specific places. So I thought hot glue was a good choice because then I could take these off of this project if I wanted to down the line. So here is this finished DIY miniature succulent shadow box. I did put that little battery pack just right behind the box, but you really can't see it. I had so much fun making this DIY. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, please don't hesitate to pounce on that like button and hit subscribe. It really truly does mean so much. I hope you all are having a wonderfully perfect day. And if you want to see more like this from me, feel free to click on that notification bell so you can be notified every single time I upload a new video. With that being said, this is Miss Alley Cat DIY signing off. Bye bye.